In this episode of the Extended Forecast, I sit down with Bill Walsh, a broadcast meteorologist with nearly 4 decades of experience covering the weather in Charleston, South Carolina. Walsh began his Charleston career with a bang, covering Category 4 Hurricane Hugo's landfall in 1989, all while feet of water flowed into the station. He moved across town in 1993 to WCSC, where he remains to this day. Bill has been through all kinds of weather, but has also ventured out into other interests, going overseas with the military, writing novels, and even making appearances on popular soap operas. But weather is his passion, holding both the NWA and CBM seals. Bill has countless stories about how the meteorology field has changed since he began, what he's learned along the way, and what he hopes the remainder of his career brings. He also goes into detail about how his large, crazy sock collection began. We discuss it all over the next half hour. Join us for the wide-ranging conversation. Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I want to start off talking about things I learned through researching for preparation for this. I knew obviously that you were a meteorologist, but not so much that you have an experience with a military background, taking part in that, also an author, you dabbled in acting. So the first question I have is, how have you found time to do all of that? And piggybacking off that, do you encourage people to pursue all their interests and not just one specific thing?
Matthew, by the way, great to be here, and I really love. This is a great thing that you're doing on the big, the YouTube podcasting and all that other stuff. That's great. So, I find the time. Well, it just depends. Like when I was doing military stuff, I could still do the weather on television, but the military thing came along once a month. I did that for. Now, sometimes it would be more than once a month, just depending on the missions and stuff like that. So I would work that around my TV schedule, and they were very, very, really good with that. I started doing that in 1993. I was commissioned in the Navy, and I did that until 2001, and I switched to the Air Force Reserve right after 9/11. Actually, it was the January after 9/11 that I switched to the Air Force, and I stayed with the Air Force until I retired not too long ago after 23 years. But the TV station was really good in just being able to work with me. And the military, and being able to do my regular job and then do the other job, which was the military stuff, which took me sometimes out of town, took me to far flung places sometimes on some pretty colorful trips. And so it was a lot of fun. And the author, the writing and stuff, I did a lot of that while I was traveling for the military. So I started writing novels. I did one, and I wrote it during the time I was traveling for the military. So a lot of times when I was on the C-17, doing C-17 work, we'd fly, 8-hour trips, in one leg, from here to Germany, or Germany to, Bagram, Afghanistan, or to Kandahar. These are long flights. And so I started writing during some of that downtime in my military travel. I started writing some suspense novels. So that's kind of how that happened. And the acting stuff, which sort of came in between. I was doing some stuff for CBS. I did the weekend. Filled in on the weekend CBS show, a Saturday show. So I would go out and do like a weekend fill-in on the Saturday. They called it the early show at that time, and then I just started doing some fill-in stuff, or some day rolls on a couple of the soaps. So that was more for fun than anything. that was just just for fun. But my main job, of course, doing the weather. I've been doing it here in Charleston for coming up on it'll be 39 years this summer. But here at Channel 5, I've been since 1993, so coming up on 32 years here. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was going to ask about your nearly 4 decades in Charleston, obviously starting a few years before Hurricane Hugo hit. What was it like to kind of have that thrown at you just a few years into your career?
Yeah, I got to tell you, Matthew, it was crazy. So I just started that job, and I was a young chief meteorologist. It was a first, and I was really young to be a chief. But I got hired by WCIV in Charleston in 1986. And the person who was the chief was leaving. She was going to have a baby. Betsy Green was still friends today. And then she was going to leave the business. So I ended up kind of inheriting the chief job there. And so it was, really within 86, 87. It was like within 2.5 years later, we get this major hurricane. We hadn't had a major hurricane strike in the U.S., never mind Charleston, in years. It was a downtime for hurricanes in this decadal shifts and stuff like that. So here comes this massive hurricane, 140, 135 mile an hour storm, 935 on the pressure. It was heading right toward Charleston. It made landfall at midnight over the Charleston Harbor, like right over the harbor, and it wiped our TV station off the map pretty much. We had six feet of water in the building. It
Wow.
was just crazy ridiculous. We had to evacuate and stay on the air at the same time, and it was just a heck of an experience. So it really was. It was just a timing thing, Matthew. It was, and I was pretty young at the time. Was that 20? I was 27. So, I mean, and I was fairly, it was my first chief job. And here we are dealing with a major hurricane. And it was a big event as far as national coverage, because a lot of people, we hadn't had a major hurricane strike in the US in decades. And here comes this one. And it was on every single TV, network at the time, some cable, because cable was relatively new then. CNN had it and stuff like that. And so it gave me a little notoriety from that. That's how I ended up with the CBS thing. So, in time, it was actually NBC first. I did some fill-in stuff with the Today Show. And then when I went to CBS, the CBS affiliate, I got to do the same sort of thing.
So did that storm kind of cement you into wanting to stay in Charleston long term, or was that the plan all along?
It was. I mean, my plan really was. I grew up in New England. I'm a Rhode Islander by birth, and I went to college in Boston and up in Vermont. And it was, it was a. I was thinking about coming down here. I signed an 18-month contract originally, which was I didn't want to sign like a 3-year deal, but 18 months thinking, oh, I'm going to get my experience. I'm going to go back to New England, maybe go to Boston, because I worked in Providence when I came down here. But I was working at WLNE in Providence. I was doing Thursday, Friday mornings, and then the weekend. And then I got the offer to be full-time down here doing the chief job. So it was smaller market, but bigger job, and Monday through Friday. So I ended up thinking, well, I'll try it for 18 months. So, but coming up this August, it'll be 39 years. So I guess I stayed. But I was, it was the best of a lot of worlds. I love the warm weather. I mean, being Rhode Islander, you sort of have to look toward Florida in the winter, and go down there. But I wanted to work in Florida. I just looked too young. I interviewed in West Palm Beach and WINK in Southwest Florida, in beautiful and scenic Lee County down there, in Fort Myers. And both jobs, they really liked me, but they said I looked too young. And I ended up coming home to Rhode Island and there was a message on my machine, and it was from Celia Shaw at WCIV in Charleston, South Carolina. So that's kind of how I was looking for someplace warmer, where I could get more experience and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, but the hurricane kind of did cement me here. I mean, it really did. I mean, it's sort of, I got a lot of notoriety out of it. I won an Emmy for it. I mean, so it was that sort of thing, that it was terrible storm, but good for my career.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you don't want it to be something that maybe defines you, but it is kind of cool how it's something you still look back on 4 decades later.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, and we still talk about it all the time. This market will never forget, that hurricane. Kids growing up now don't even realize how big that storm was. But it is, it was just the timing, right? It happened, and I would just happen to be the guy in the seat at the time. At the time, it was the NBC affiliate. I'm now at Channel 5, which is a CBS affiliate, but the Channel 5 was the big station in town. And I was over at Channel 4, and my friend Rob was at Channel 2, and we went through the storm together. And we were still real good friends here in the market. So, and both still here. So it's kind of funny.
And for us here in the Wilmington area, obviously our major storm throughout history is Hazel back in '54.
Right.
And the most recent major hurricane here locally, I think, was Fran or Floyd back in the 90s. But the last one, as you mentioned, for South Carolina was Hugo. Do you feel like the people that live there are becoming a bit complacent with the fact that you haven't had a major hurricane in decades? Or do you feel like they're good about keeping on top of things each season?
I think a little both. I think people have never gone through a hurricane will always be complacent, not really experiencing the type of storm that it was, especially a direct hit when the power's gone for weeks and the infrastructure's taken out and stuff like that. I mean, then we have these, I call them the drive-bys, like the ones you mentioned, the Floyds, the Frans, these, the Dorians, the Matthews, storms like that just come by the coast and give us a scare. And that some people think that we're crying wolf or whatever, but we can get some pretty nasty blow from some of these storms that go by us, like Dorian and Matthew in the recent years. Even with Debbie, which was technically a tropical storm last year and put 20 plus inches of rain in part of the market. So I think there's some people complacent, but some people are weather aware, especially when you start seeing a lot of what's going on with these big storms that have been, things like the Miltons of the world and the hurricane and Michael that was a Cat 5. Some of these big Cat 5s that we've had over the last Dorian over the last few years, they get a lot of notice now. So people see it on social media and they see it all over the place. If you don't know there's a major storm out there, you're under a rock.
Exactly. And one of the things we talk about a lot here is the fact that, first of all, every storm is different. Don't just go off, I made it through the last one, I'll be fine this time too. But we had a potential tropical cyclone 8 dump, I think, 20 plus inches of rain in Carolina Beach this past year and tons of flooding there. So it doesn't necessarily take a named storm or a major storm to cause a lot of issues.
No, it doesn't. In fact, if you remember Florence that came into the Outer Banks there around Atlantic Beach and started coming south toward you, actually moved south versus north. And it was what, 1 or 2 miles an hour. It put 20 plus inches of
Yeah.
rain into southeast North Carolina. I mean, causing a lot of flooding in Wilmington and all along the Cape Fear River Basin, all of that area, southeast North Carolina, northeast South Carolina. I mean, that was a mess. And that was just a very slow moving storm that was just cut off from the trade, the westerly. So, but you're right, storms like that, like Debbie last year, they don't have to be a major hurricane, and you have to tell people it doesn't take a major hurricane to cause major damage.
Exactly. And I feel like a lot of us have these storms that make us interested in weather and eventually seeing weather broadcast meteorologists too that we look up to. One of the first people in your career at your current station was Charlie Hall back in the day.
Yeah.
What did you learn from him, and what was that experience like getting to learn alongside him?
He was such a great guy, Matthew. I mean, I was privileged to be able to work for him, to be his number two, to work alongside him. But he was he was from a different generation of, that greatest generation that, he was an icon here. Remember, I mean, he signed the station on. He was literally on the first day, it was his face and voice that said, Live 5 is now alive. Back, I think it was 55. So he was like literally the first person on the TV station.
Yeah, the original.
The original, right? And but he was an amazing guy, just a great, great person. I would be building his graphics, and I was hired to be his number two, and to come in. And at the time, we didn't have a 5 p.m. show. We had a 6:30 and an 11. And then when they added the 5 p.m. show, and my contract was up at Channel 4, it was a great opportunity to come over here to Channel 5 to work with Charlie and to build a storm center, because we didn't really have a storm center. We had a Live Line 5, which was an old weather system. And that was it, that and Charlie. And we had Mike Hyatt, and we had Keith Nichols doing the morning, and we did the news at 10 as well. So there was an opportunity to come in and work with Charlie, and it was really fantastic. So I would build his graphics, build the shows, and he'd sit there and we would go back and forth, and we'd have great conversations, and he was just really easy to work for and to work with, but just being such an icon, it was really kind of cool. And they named the street after him. The street that the station is on is Charlie Hall Boulevard. So they, obviously he made a mark. They named a street after him. And it was really sad when he passed away in 1997, I think it was. But it was great to be able to be, part of his journey in television, and also to carry on the torch that he passed to us.
Are there still things you do now that he taught you that you're still carrying with you to this day?
Absolutely. Yeah. He always would say a couple of things. He would say, "Save your money." He'd always give you this great, he'd sit there and eat those little square crackers that you get like 6 in a package. He loved those cheese crackers. So he'd just sit there, right? And you tell me, save your money, but also don't go too fast. And he would always say, alert, don't alarm people, right? And we're a first alert station here, right? So, I mean, it's interesting that we still use that alert, but he would always say, don't alarm people, just alert them, and he would always be calm in the storm. And to this day, I still use a lot of that. I mean, being calm in the storm, we don't want to, scare people. And also, you want to be the authority. And he was really good at that.
I think that's interesting too, because nowadays with social media, you get so many hype forecasts and 300 hours out and this and this and that. So to have someone that you can rely on and trust is important nowadays.
I think it is. And I think, with the amazing amount of social media that's out there, all of these different weather pages and weather people and meteorologists and some not meteorologists and these storm chasers. And there's a lot of information out there, Matthew, as you know. And a lot of times during a big storm, we have to sort of make sure that we're putting the right information out, but also sometimes we have to debunk that, stuff that's out there that people might be talking about. A storm might be coming to whatever, and, days and days out. We have to be able to just kind of play it down the middle, give them the facts and not, wish cast, with some stuff that's out there. There's just a lot of stuff out there. So I always tell people, just know your source, know that they're knowledgeable, that they're trustworthy, and that they are actually using real data. Not a lot of this, crazy clickbait that's out there.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult too, because we're trying to get out the most accurate, or at least best prediction we can. And you have certain things out there trying to get clicks and stuff like that. But I think for the most part, people know where to go and who they can rely on during any situation.
Yeah, I think so. And they have their favorites. Everybody does.
Yeah.
And as long as you can trust that person, and you'll see a lot of stuff floating by, and you're scrolling. There's a lot of great weather pages out there, a lot of great weather apps out there. And we try to be one of those, those reliable, accurate, solid pieces of information that people can go back to, especially if they're comparing, something that they might have seen from so-and-so web page that they're not sure is real or whatever.
Yeah, and changing gears a bit, you and I actually met briefly back at the Hurricane Tour Expo thing in Charleston last May, I think. And one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that you had on socks that had radar images on them.
Yes.
I like wearing cool socks too. How did you come to want to do that? And do you know how many pairs of socks that you have?
It's funny you said that, because I have Apollo socks on today.
Look at those.
Put the Apollo.
Always something cool.
Yeah. I have this is how it started. Somebody mailed me a pair of socks that had a Doppler radar image on them. So what was cool was I thought that was really neat. And then I visit a lot of schools, as you do, I'm sure. We do a lot of school visitations, and they started giving me socks. So I had radar socks, lightning socks, cloud socks, sun socks. So they started just giving me socks. So sometimes I'll get some in the mail, or they'll give me a socks at a school visit. I went and did a thing down at our homeless shelter down here recently, at 180 Place, and they gave me 180 Place socks. So it was pretty crazy how that has started. But how many pairs? I have no idea. I'm gonna change.
Lost count.
Oh, I'm telling you, I'm gonna take you into our storm center. I've lost count. I mean, I've got, like 3 drawers full of socks. I try to rotate them actually, which is good. This is our storm center, by the way. It is a great place to do the weather, and also it gives us a nice quiet area to be doing analyzing stuff. And then of course we have our studio, which I sort of gave you a quick look at, but I'll show it to you here. But this is this is a fairly new studio. It's quite large. It was designed for our Atlanta station originally. We were the second one to get it. So we've got giant monitors here, monitors there. We've got our huge giant green wall, and then the interview set I was sitting on. And there's Raphael James, our evening anchor, and he is doing a mic check for our 3 o'clock news. And this is our set, which is quite large actually. It's a beautiful. It
looks nice.
And we do a 3 o'clock news in the afternoon now. So we do a 3, 4, 4:30, 5, 5:30, 6, 7, 7:30, and 11 in the evening. And then we do the 4:30 in the morning, 5, 5:30, 6, 6:30, and then we do the cut-ins at 7 to 9, and then we do this Palmetto Life show at 9 o'clock, right? 9 o'clock.
9, yeah.
I should know that because I did it the other day.
That's quite a few shows.
So we're doing a lot of shows, that's for sure. It's pretty crazy.
Well, since things are starting to get going behind you, I'll ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
All that you've done in your career, places you've gone, things you've done, is there anything you still want to accomplish before everything is said and done?
You know, I just want to accomplish doing doing good shows every day for as long as they'll have me here for a while. I just think there's nothing that I haven't done that I've got to do national. I got to do local. I've gotten to do some very cool trips with the military. So, there's nothing out there that I want to try this, to do that. And I think I just like doing what I'm doing now and the additional things that I do outside of television. I'll do more movie stuff, I think, as I move, get a little older, and I just like doing the TV, doing the weather every day. So it's just a lot of fun. So there's nothing on my bucket list as far as TV that I haven't gotten to do, like flying with the Hurricane Hunters or the Blue Angels, or I got to do a lot of those. I've been lucky to be able to do a lot of those things. And whatever comes up, you just never know. I would love to sit down and interview the Eagles. There's some things that I would love to do. I'm not sure I'll end up doing unless I'm, I wouldn't mind doing more of the CBS weekend fill-in stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now that they're using affiliates again, I did a bunch of that in the 90s and early 2000s. And I really enjoyed doing that on the weekends. But, you just never know what comes along. But I'm very satisfied right now as things are.
Sounds like you had a good career and lots of good stuff coming too.
Yep. Great. It's a lot of fun, Matthew. We need to have you down here in Charleston. Come see us.
I'll come by sometime. All right. Thank you once again for the time. I appreciate it and hope you have a good one.
All right. Bye, Matthew. See you soon. Take care.
Big thanks to meteorologist Bill Walsh for taking the time to talk to me. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, and subscribe for more future content just like this.